selecting head of the State Fiscal Service of Ukraine, I'd like to invite to the podium the participants in this briefing who are going to tell you the news about the specific results. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Our today's press conference is dedicated to the issues of the selection candidates for the head of the State Fiscal Service of Ukraine. By the order of the Prime Minister of Ukraine, they established the Competition Council, which actually took care of the selection of those candidates. On behalf of the Minister of Finance of Ukraine, I would like to emphasize that we have been interested in the fact that this procedure be transparent and just and fair regarding all the candidates who intended and participated in this competition or this contest. The Minister of Finance received the, let's say, application of all those who wishing and considered all of those. The competition procedure included 3 stages, and tomorrow we are going to have the open procedure of selection of those who made it to the final contest. But today at our press conference, we are going to publish the list of those people or persons who are going to be part of the open hearing, those candidates for the position of the head of the State Fiscal Service Ukraine. We would like to see the new head to be the person who not only is well versed in taxation, but also has some experience in managing big-time companies. It's critically important that this person be distantiated from the political process inside the country and also from the effect or the interests of the financial industrial groups or big-time business. One more important thing, this person who is going to be selected to that position must have a clear understanding of strategy of reform in the State Fiscal Service of Ukraine and implementing reforms in this country. This is important not only to our country and to the Minister of Finance of Ukraine, but also to all our foreign partners. Naturally, the future candidate for the position of the head of State Fiscal Service Ukraine must be a well-motivated person and must have the desire to wish to change in this country the system of the state management. It's based on the results of the first stage of selection of 77 candidates. We have only 44 candidates left who were invited for the open interview procedure. Based on the results of the interviews with each of the candidates, out of 47 persons, we, by way of just simple voting, we passed a decision regarding those candidates who made it to the final and who are going to take part tomorrow in the open competition. We are going to televise this in online mode, this procedure, I mean. After this press briefing, all the candidates and the finalists are going to receive, to be given, to be asked the same questions, 3 questions. They have time to prepare for tomorrow's answering those questions. We would like to know what the manager's 3 tasks, so-called KPIs, this specific candidate believes to be the most important. Also, number 2, we would like each of them to offer to us or to propose to us 3 major indicators using which 1 year later we are going to measure or to assess the success of those this person and this position. And number 3, we would like the candidates to answer the following issue, to share with the members of the Commission their first 3 steps they are going to implement in combating corruption. Tomorrow we are going to hear the information from all the finalists. And after this, we are going to make our decision, and then we are going to give the recommendation to Prime Minister of Ukraine. And finally, the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine is going to pass a final decision. I would like to emphasize that our decision has a recommendation nature. Not necessarily we have to come up with one person, two or five candidates. This will be known tomorrow based on the results of our voting. Now I would like to pass the microphone to our counselors or advisors who were involved in this procedure. Those are the representatives of Ward Howell Hudson Company, ANCOR companies, the leading companies in this sphere, who shared with us their experience and assisted us in selecting the candidates. You have the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Ilona Sharova. I'm director of the international consulting company Hudson. Together with my colleagues, we were involved in the selection procedure for the position of head of state fiscal service Ukraine. We faced several tasks. We participated in the first stage of selection as advisors to provide the quality selection, forming the criteria and selection of the candidates based on the criteria which were defined. And since we participated in different selection campaign for the positions of different companies and the successful managerial staff, and since and that's why we were involved in order to assist the Commission in such a similar selection. Number two task of ours is to invite and involve from the market those candidates, maybe even those persons who didn't think about, let's say, sending an application for this position, but taking into consideration that we know those people and that we communicated with them within the framework of other projects, we offered them to consider, to entertain this possibility. Some of them agreed to apply for this position, and some of them even are the finalists of this open contest, and they will take part in this final competition. Now, I would like to ask my colleagues to tell us who we invited the candidates or would-be candidates, why they agreed or disagreed to participate in our competition. Thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Igor Kabuzenko. I'm head of the Ward Howell company in Ukraine. How we formed the list of those candidates who did not even think to apply for this position when this contest was announced. First of all, we actually applied to approach those companies who could participate in this contest. We believe that by all means there must be businesses which are based not on schematic grounds, who work in Ukraine to create their competitive, let's say, advantages, who are competitive and can become winners not only in Ukrainian businesses but also among businesses in foreign countries. In this way, we defined about 100 managers and heads of those companies and started to gradually propose them to participate in this contest. I would like to say that not all of managers or owners of the companies were prepared to accept this proposal, and my colleague Yuri will now report to you why. So, good afternoon, esteemed colleagues. My name is Yuriy Perch. I'm director of the holding company, which works on the selection campaign, selection of personnel market for several years. Among those candidates who we approached with our proposal to participate in this competition, the overwhelming majority very sincerely, open-heartedly respond to these proposals. However, some of those people, the mature managers, also share their doubts regarding this proposal. In particular, we actually outlined the major three reasons which arouse doubts among the managerial staff. Number one, the possibility to form or to establish their own team. We know that this big structure can be managed by one person. So the first reason, whether this specific person will have the real powers or authorities and form himself or herself his or her own team. The second reason for the doubts, people asked us whether they are going to face a political risk because this can actually tell upon their career, and they understand have to implement the strategy, take into consideration their companies and becoming the part of this public structure. They understand they face some risk. The third reason, investment package. Some of the people realized that in the position, the public position, the compensation, remuneration is much lower than in business, so they had some doubts. They said, okay, we are prepared to work with over 1 year on the conditions, terms and conditions proposed now by the state, but this can be for good. I'm one of those people who accept our proposal to participate in the competition. They said, okay, we are prepared to help the country during this period of time, but also they had some doubts, which I mentioned before. Thank you. Maybe my colleagues from the Commission will complement what I mentioned before, what was happening with those candidates. Always those candidates. Dear colleagues, my name is Kachka. I'm Vice President of American Chamber of Commerce. I was invited to be on this commission, selection committee, and owing to the activities of our consultants, indeed, out of all those competition contests and different discussions and committees regarding the issue of the personnel over the last 12 or 18 months, I must say that maybe this is one of the most ambitious lists of the candidates. And indeed, we had some candidates from who we could select the best ones. And since the competence was a key issue, whether they have the managerial experience or then do they have the understanding of the management in public institutions, understanding of the internal or in-house, so to say, environment, we really reached the consensus that this must be a maximum technocratic person, non-politically engaged, and since the interest was shown by those people who also have the experience of work in the executive bodies of authority, and they have the understand that the political influence of this position must have place, so to say. So we again reached some consensus, and in principle we didn't have, or we didn't have any candidate which would raise some doubts whether to include this person to list or not. So the final list of the candidates actually reflects all possible options of competition, which can be the case for selecting a person for this position. This is an advantage because we do not have a group of candidates with the same set of competences, and since today the dialogue which has been established between business and the authorities testifies to the fact that the problems which exist today is not because of the will of one person or the functions have something to do with the challenge of the culture of the big organization. This is a very sophisticated, complicated, or complex process, and not only they have to be graphic leaders, but also have to influence the culture of the organization per se, because we expect that sooner or later the fiscal service will become the service organization, which is being declared at the level of the state, and which is the expectations for business. My name is Valeriy Pekar. I'm coordinator of the NGO New Country, and I represent the public at large in this competition committee. That means that I have to guarantee to the society that everything was okay, transparent, and integral. Four things that I'm going to tell. All of us, we understand that the fiscal service is one of those bodies or agencies which was mostly criticized, bitterly criticized today. That's why the appointment of the head of the fiscal service is with the focus of attention of the whole society in the country. That means that the way the competition is going to take place depends whether we'll have a lot of optimism or pessimism. So we try to do everything possible for this to become the exemplary pilot project, how to appoint the top officials today, at least during the first stage. Number two, I would like to say that we have a lot of people to select from. Those people who make it to the finals, and they are different. And again, there are a lot of people from whom to select from. And again, I don't want to say that This is the list of the people who we are going to be finally recommended to cabinet of ministers, because we do not have the spectacular leader, the only leader who is better than anybody else. We have a lot of persons who have good chances. I took part in many interviews, and I understand how to form. We have to understand how to form the state fiscal service of Ukraine. There is a big number of different tables with many different ideas. We have a detailed, deliberated programs. There are candidates who understand who understand how they're going to form the teams and how to reform the fiscal service in Ukraine, so that the entrepreneurs never think what's the name of this person. And candidates represent different strata. There are people who have been working and still working in the system, those who have never been working in the system, or those who first worked in this system, then had the business, or vice versa. We did not limit ourselves to those who have experience in working in the civil service. First of all, most important to us was the level of skills of the person. Number four, there are many people who did not make it for different criteria. They lacked maybe managerial experience, or some other qualities, lacked other qualities or competences. But there are a lot of people who can be recommended for the head of fiscal services, member of his or her team. There are a lot of top professionals who can make a new team, who we are sure, given there is a political will quickly reform the fiscal service, and this is going to be one of the graphic victories much awaited by our business elite. And we have to do that, and then we'll see the transformations and changes in the business climate, which will also include the changes to the legislation. And the last thing, speaking about the criteria of selection, we were guided both by the formal criteria and not so much formal criteria. Among the formal criteria, those included the experience of managing big organizations, analytical thinking, strategic skills, understand the fiscal system goals, and motivation of the candidate, those things which, of course, we had to take in consideration, and this was our top priority. But also we considered how this or another candidate asks the question regarding motivation, or risks, or the loads, or the pressure which may be on the part of this or not clans, whether this person has a charisma required, because it must be very powerful and strong person to make this service from the punitive to the positive service, whether it has an understanding of economy and not just a narrow understanding of the fiscal service. We give the benefits to those persons who can show those majority of those quality at the same time. And of course, at the very beginning, we feared that we wouldn't have a sufficient number of the candidates. After the first interviews, we ceased to fear that. We have quite a number of those who are real candidates for these heads, and we for those who can recommend to the cabinet of ministers. Again, there are quite a few people from who can select the head of the fiscal service. And now the Deputy Finance Minister of Ukraine, Ms. Olena Makeieva, will give you the names of the finalists. Okay, summing up, I would like once again to emphasize that, first of all, we were concentrated on a person as a candidate. We were absolutely independent in our selection, and going a bit ahead of the topic, we didn't have any political ambitions regarding the candidates. Number two, we tried not to differentiate ourselves from the fact whether this person is a politician today or a businessman today. The most important
For us, the most important was compliance with those criteria which we put forth in advance as requirements to the candidates. So, one more thing which I would like to add. tomorrow we are having open competition. We will provide the online translation, and I have to with you probably tomorrow. We won't come to some decision, and we'll make this decision on Friday. And I would like to emphasize that we might have 3-5 candidates. And after there's a selection procedure, there will be discussion about the candidates which participated in final stage. And now the list of finalists. After this press conference, we immediately will supply them with 3 questions, which I mentioned. The list is comprised in alphabetic order to prevent any question. Васюков Геннадій, Гладун Віктор, Деревицький Дмитро, Дроговоз Юлія, Коломієць Андрій, Любченко Олексій, Мокляк Максим, Несіров Роман, Петрашко Ігор, Продан Оксана, number 11, Недашкін Денис, and number 12, Недашкіна Ніна. Юдашкіна Ніна. I congratulate our finalists and invite you to the final selection round, which will be tomorrow. We believe that the entire country will be proud of the result of our work. I have a question. This is for the first time when selection committee will recommend somebody to the cabinet. So what was the lessons that you learned from the selection procedure as a team, and what will be your advice for the future selection committees? I would say people are very different, and you should speak to people to understand more about these people. It's impossible to come to conclusion based on written documents, from CVs, from motivation letters, from statements. You cannot make a right decision. The second lesson that we learned is that even the announcement of the open competition creates precondition for huge social lift, because people with broad experience in business organizations, they saw that things are changing, and that is, we understood that systemic approach, sustainability in procedure, openness should become major features in any selection process, and this will enable all the observers to see positive changes and be sure that everything is done correctly. And one more important thing is that we realized that the process should be multi-stage. It is not possible to come to conclusion about each candidate during one interview. after one interview. Sometimes you need to have 2, 3, or even 4 interviews, and you have to invest more effort, more energy, more nerve. I would like to add very shortly. There were some people who mentioned that some people who recognized that they were unable to occupy this position, but they would like to work for the state fiscal service or in the Ministry of Finance. That's why I would like to encourage people who wish to work in the Ministry of Finance, and please do not wait and apply your motivation letters. Also, I would like to add that results of this competition, they proves that not all those candidates who potentially could participate, they did not apply, and that's why the one of the lessons to the future is that involvement of external experts is important when you wish to make a short list of candidates, extended short list. For us as consultants in this process, one lesson learned was that transparent competition in selection of the candidates to the civil service is possible. We observed how Olena Makeieva worked with representatives of civil society, with Valeriy Pekar, with Kachka, and this convinced that this cooperation is possible. How do you think, is it possible that one of those recommended candidates which you submit to the Cabinet of Ministers, it won't be supported by the Prime Minister? I would like to emphasize once again that this won't be just one person. There will be 3, 5 people, and I think in this situation, Prime Minister will have sufficient number of options. Pravda Ukraine and representative of the Association Journalists. So long ago, I published a newspaper and had a chance to cooperate with the tax service. When I have seen the list of candidates, I realized that there were many dignified people, but among those 12 people, I do not see any dignified. So the question, what will happen to those dignified people when they are not included to the number of final participants? And the second question, whether it will be possible to ask a question in course of today's final procedure. And the third question, when rejecting some candidates, there were any subjectivism. So the final selection will take place tomorrow. Unfortunately, we cannot ensure possibility to ask questions to the candidates. In order to ensure this fair and equal approach, we will provide finalists with 3 questions, 3 the same questions. The second, there were no subjectivism in course of selection. At the beginning, some experts, especially representatives of business, requested that this candidate should not be a public figure. It should be capable as the head of fiscal service. So I won't set this requirement as a priority.
First of all, as I mentioned before, there are a lot of people were, so to say, sieved out or filtered out, but they can fit these requirements. Irrespective of who is going to be appointed by the cabinet ministers to that position, we are going to recommend as members of the committee, since we know all the candidates for this position of the head of fiscal service, we are going to recommend to this person, the would-be head, many people to work with him. There are a lot of people who have much experience, who are much experienced in the communication issues in our, etc. There are some people who can be very good chief of staff, so to say, or the head of the headquarters. There are some theoreticians, because of some of the limitations, they cannot be public leaders, but they can be very good methodologists. All those people will be recommended by us to fill this or another post in this service. Speaking about subjectivism, of course, there is some kind of subjectivism in that person, but the subjectivism is well-organized objectivism, you know. Many times we tried from different perspectives, from point of view business or Minister of Finance, public, and business HRs. We wanted to reach a consensus regarding each specific candidate, whether this person has chances to do that or not. But since we are very different people, we often argued between ourselves, but we would like to proceed from subjectivity to reach the objectivity. You know, in that list which was voiced by Olena a few minutes ago, there are some public figures, or there are non-public figures, which is also a normal thing to do. In conclusion, I would like to once again congratulate our finalists, and we are looking forward to hearing your reports tomorrow. And on behalf of the Minister of Finance and on personal behalf, I would like to thank the team. Unfortunately, we could not make it here today, all of us. I would like to thank them all. I know how many hours or nights, sleepless nights you spent. I would like to thank our colleagues and partners, and thank you very much for your questions. I hope that we are going to justify your expectations. Thank you very much for your participation. I would like to wish you inspiration and success in tomorrow's selection. Unfortunately, we don't have time. If you believe your information to be very important, you can privately approach the person. You know, I can stay here. All of us, we are prepared to stay longer here and answer questions because we planned our time. We are open. Any of your questions will be answered, believe me.